Reshma and Shanshan, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited to dive deep into the world of tech transfer and IP commercialization with you. To get us started, why don't you share a little bit about yourselves and the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab and what you do there? Reshma, do you want to go first?
Sure. Thank you, Sabah. Thanks. It's a great honor for Shanshan and I to be here, invited here by OneValley. You guys are doing an awesome job, and we hope to be able to be a really good part of the network. So for introductions, my name is Reshma Singh, and currently I'm the program director for a couple of technology to commercialization programs at the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. LBNL or Berkeley Lab has been around since 1931. It's one of the DOE's 17 national labs focused on bringing energy innovations and energy transformations for broader societal and global impact. And as part of our mission, we have an area called Energy Technologies area, where we focused on really starting that innovation through new IP development. And we also have another area called the Intellectual Property Office, where Shanshan sits, where we're able to actually bring the IP to market. So having said that, my background is in architecture, actually. So I started my life as a building architect, got some design thinking there, and then started to become interested more in sustainability principles, became a lead AP. One thing led to another, and I started a startup back in the early 2000s around how to bring edutech over a web platform, and had thousands of users worldwide on really bringing awareness and education to sustainable buildings. I sold that many, many years ago, moved to Berkeley from the Boston area, and then got involved with LBNL as an R&D person. And through the course of my R&D journey, patented a couple of devices, met Shanshan through that, and got interested in technology commercialization of hard technologies around climate tech and sustainability. So there I am as a program director for two programs. One is called Impel, which is incubating market-propelled entrepreneurship at the labs. And the other one is called Cradle to Commerce, where we are trying to bring scientifically validated technologies to market in partnership with some great organizations such as yours. I'll hand it off to Shanshan.
Thanks, Reshma. Thanks, Sabah, for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be able to join you for this conversation. My path to technology transfer and commercialization, it's pretty much much more boring and straightforward. I actually started off, I came to the States in the 90s and from Japan, actually en route from Japan, and ended up getting my degrees here. And my first job out of school was at Lawrence Berkeley Lab, and first started in the scientific division, and then moved quickly into technology transfer because I found it was exciting to see both where the technology was developed and also where it's heading, which is going into the business and commercial world. And that's where technology transfer is functions as that kind of intersection between the innovation and commercial sector. So I started at the very bottom of the tech transfer world, and started with marketing communications, and then gradually worked on business development and doing a lot of outreach with companies and try to identify those market needs for the technologies. And now I'm a commercialization manager for the Department Intellectual Property Office, and through that function, I help manage the intellectual property that's developed within the energy technologies area, and that's where Reshma resides in. And so we met a few years back, and through her desire to file a patent application for her concept, and since then we came together through these different type of commercialization, tech transfer related activities, and now we're both overseeing the Cradle to Commerce program.
the two fierce women behind Cradle to Commerce. And I'm honored that I get to work with you as well and have had a chance to engage with you and the Cradle to Commerce program. So both Reshma and Shanshan, it sounds like the common thread between sort of what the work that you do and where you overlap is really in this concept of lab to market programs. How would you could you define that for our audience, and how important do you think are collaborations between academia, industry, government in fostering successful initiatives that are lab to market? And what strategies have you seen or employed to encourage those fruitful partnerships among different stakeholders?
So as you know that concepts can come from anywhere, and we're trying to make sure that some of the biggest challenges that we have on the planet today should find the deepest answers and the most impactful answers. So we found that in terms of the government sector and the private sector coming together, those have been like really the dovetailing of those two has been critical for all the game-changing technologies and innovations that have happened. So if you think about everything, like starting from um, things like the space, right? Space used to be a government sector um, area for innovation and NASA, but now it's become synonymous with private companies such as SpaceX and Blue Origin, who are trying to go faster and sort of dovetail with bringing in government grants as well as bringing in the speed of commercialization. Another area is really around a simple thing like the GPS, right? It was started in the Department of the Navy, and now it is pretty much, TomTom, Garmin, every watch has a GPS. And had it not been for government grants that seeded this innovation, we would have not had a world which relies on GPS for every single thing that we do.
I couldn't
Um,
drive my car without GPS. I'm completely dependent on that technology.
I'm with you. And so like we're at this critical junction now with climate, right? Where this is actually an existential crisis. And if we don't use this critical moment in history to do a Manhattan Project style, you know, huge push where the government and the private sector come together, not for the sake of a war, but this for the sake of the survival of this planet. Unless that happens, I don't think we will be able to save the earth. So I think that the concept of lab to market is not just a concept, it is a critical need. And therefore, the collaboration between academic institutions who have bright talent, between industry that knows how to commercialize technologies, and with government, which is able to bring the policy, the regulatory mechanisms, and the early stage funding to really bring new talent into the forefront to then commercialize, is just absolutely critical for shaping a solid future for the planet.
Um, I have to say though, right, technology commercialization hasn't been a buzzword since I started working in the tech transfer, function. And technology transfer didn't start until the Bayh-Dole Act in 1990 that was enacted in the 1980s. And the Berkeley Lab Tech Transfer Office started in mid 80s, and so and our first startup was in 1991. We had the first startup out of our Berkeley Lab. So it hasn't been that long, and over the years I've been working in office, commercialization hasn't been the buzzword at all. Nobody really,
Yeah.
when you talk to scientists, the most what they care about is publication and filing a patent and trying to put a protection around the idea and find a home for the technology they invented wasn't their priority before. And because which is for good reason, because when you are innovating and looking for solving some really hard problems, you don't want to have to worry about anything else. But looking at the problem and trying to figure out what would be the scientifically the best solution for it, right? So it's only recent years that DOE has started pushing to make sure that these scientifically, developed the ideas get to the market and actually get some, get to be used and benefit the society, and which is the mission of the lab and mission of the tech transfer at national labs. So since the existence of tech transfer, and we've launched about over 70 startups through Berkeley Lab tech transfer effort, but that's not a small effort, because it requires a lot of resources and cooperation from the researchers and the scientific community to actually really want to engage with stakeholders in the private sector, as well as not just collaborating and academically with other academic institutions, and to come up with the cool ideas. You need to really learn from each other why this problem you're solving is important and relevant.
Yeah, it definitely feels like commercialization, tech transfer, these have become as buzzwordy as AI is today, right, in this day and age. And so, Shanshan, I think that like it's interesting to hear that it was only really in the 90s where sort of people even started thinking about tech transfer and commercialization to sort of be paired together. But you do agree that tech commercialization is having a moment right now, and I think it's probably due to the CHIPS Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, the massive amounts of federal funding that are going on that is getting put into building equitable innovation ecosystems across the US at least. So from your perspective, what are the trends that you're currently observing in the tech transfer industry, right? And how do you see these trends shaping the future?
We're seeing a lot of funding calls coming out of the government for sure these days throughout all the federal agencies. A lot of calls that are related to how you engage with the private sector partner when you are looking at solving certain scientific problems, right? So and through the, like you said, through these IRA and IRA and CHIPS Acts, and the government is pumping a lot of money into, shoring up domestic, not only innovation as well as demonstration and manufacturing, right? And in addition to that, workforce development. So there are a lot that's being supported by the government, and especially in a hard and tough tech space and climate, a lot of these innovations that related to decarbonization, for example, right?
And I think that's a great call out. And one of the programs that we at OneValley are super excited to be partnering with you on is the Cradle to Commerce program, which obviously it is your baby, you're the fierce women behind it. Could you share a little bit about the program and its significance and impact in advancing energy innovation? Reshma, you might want to take that one.
Sure. So yeah, I think Cradle to Commerce really is focused on a big challenge in the market right now, which is lack of validated climate technologies. So, and this kind of goes back to the difference between academia and labs. So while academia is producing IP, usually the IP is coming from students who are there for a short time, and there's only certain type of funding that comes to academia. Whereas in labs, we have career scientists, we have researchers, we have postdocs, we have people who've spent decades researching certain problems. So we really want to focus on how to actually tackle this challenge of greenwashing and quick ROI in the market, right? There is a lot of that happening. People are not being held accountable. So we've heard from a lot of our investors that they want to do well by doing good. And they want to make sure that the kind of technologies that they're investing in is validated, is de-risked, and is the right one to be able to shake up the market. So what we are doing is we are basically curating world-class IP coming from across different national laboratories in the US, which are focused on four domains, as Shanshan mentioned. There's nuclear, grid modernization, energy storage, renewable energy, and building technologies. And what we've done is we've pulled together four different national laboratories' IP, and we have curated that IP based on what is a market pull. So Shanshan, if you click on the slideshow button, maybe we'll be able to get a better sense. Thank you. So we have our Idaho National Lab that is leading the nuclear domain, Lawrence Berkeley leading renewables, Oak Ridge National Lab leading buildings, and then Argonne National Lab leading grid modernization and energy storage. So while other incubators across the land are like a single university or a single national lab, even things like cyclotron road or chain reactions are single lab programs. But we are pulling in actually strengths from four different national labs and curating that scientifically validated IP on which scientists have been working for years and years and really getting millions of dollars of R&D funding to support that. And then we bring in these world-class IP with other assets of the national lab, such as the scientific experts and the test beds, to bring the whole science and carbon into the forefront. And we curate the right scientists, the right test beds, and the right IP. On the other hand, science and carbon without commercialization impact just lies on the shelf, right? So what we've done is we've actually trying to harness the strength of incubator organizations such as yourselves who have very powerful investor and commercialization networks, right? And you have the engine at MIT, which is focused on building tough tech expertise, and Decisive Point out of the Washington, D.C. area, which has very strong federal relationships between the DOE and the DOD. So together, we're hoping that the federal government, with both their heft in granting as well as providing pilot demonstration opportunities, can help de-risk technologies coming from the labs. So that's one big piece, is trying to get the right technology. The second big piece is to get the right talent. So in order to marry the carbon and the business, we're actually matchmaking and helping to form new teams that have an entrepreneur from the entrepreneurs at large, and also scientists and researchers from national labs, and bring these teams together so they can integrate this IP into their validated technologies. And through this incubation of top talent teams and providing ecosystem support through our incubator partner organizations, we've created Cradle to Commerce as a streamlined platform. So what we try to do is to create a single pane of glass into what otherwise would be a black box. So national labs often are perceived as black boxes, tough to do business with. You don't know where to look for the IP. You don't know how to develop licensing agreements or do research agreements. So we're really trying to create like a single pane of glass and be able to penetrate the black box into sort of a demystified, streamlined platform through which entrepreneurial talent, incubator organizations, and multiple national labs can come together and really drive climate action forward. So that's what we really try to do in a nutshell.
And this is a first of its kind program, isn't it?
We believe so. Like I mentioned, there's thousands of incubators across the world, many, many hundreds across the US. Pretty much every single university probably has an incubator or accelerator. Every lab, national lab, at least 5 or 6 have their own accelerator programs. But at Berkeley Lab, we actually are trying to become like a hub for innovation. So about 9 years ago, Cyclotron Road was started as the first national lab incubator. Activate spun out of Cyclotron Road. 5 years ago, we started Impel, focused on building technologies. But Cradle to Commerce really is the first one that brings multiple lab strengths together and creates sort of a multiplier effect in terms of both the resources as well as the potential impact, hopefully.
So you're probably both wearing so many hats. You probably have to be project management gurus and like collaboration and stakeholder management Yodas, right? Like there has to be that kind of level of just skills and ability. But I think one of the things being part of the national lab, Shanshan, you talked about this a little bit when you were talking about how sort of commercialization is a newer trend. How do you balance the need then for commercial success through such a program, but with the desire to promote wider access to innovative technologies? How do you, it's a delicate balance. How do you manage that?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. We create, so the laboratory through my office, we get about 150 to 200, you mentioned, disclosures and software disclosures through our office every year. And we have a budget of, the laboratory has a budget about over $1 billion. And so, and that number only going to increase with more, funding that come through the Department of Energy, obviously. We try our best to get to all the, the inventions that come through the office, but obviously, most importantly, is the researchers who are working on these issues, that they are currently really strapped, stretched thin in terms of their level of commitment in terms of working on the specific set of problems that they are tasked to solve, and also working with private sectors to make sure their project is relevant to solving the real world problems. So, and it is a balance. We don't want people to just come to us for the sake of trying to make money, for example, right? And so that's not our goal. We want to make sure that we provide the support they needed to do their job better. And what we are trying to do through Cradle to Commerce is trying to help provide that support through organizing domain workshop, getting the insight in these 4 domains through organizing, putting our scientists in the room with investors and industry partners, and learning about what are the issues the industries are running into in certain sector, and what are the trends that what are the needs that the market are looking for to solve certain problems, whether the scientific problems that solutions that we're providing in the form of invention and patent filing, all that, is that aligning with what industry are looking for. So that's definitely something we're trying to help provide support for, and hopefully to do better in the future, because that is a big missing and piece and misalignment that have been identified by DOE in terms of getting that higher return on investment for funding the national labs and getting the technology out to the market. And the other one is also, helping, we don't have a lot of scientists who have that skills or even interest in commercializing their technology. So having Cradle to Commerce, programs like this and building that entrepreneurial culture is making a shift within the culture of national lab and scientific community, trying to provide that additional perspective to the scientific community to show that if you do things in the right way in terms of engaging early and getting to talk to the potential stakeholders, whether it's end users or manufacturers or suppliers or anyone, policymakers, getting that conversation going early and to learn about whether there is something that they can do to help solve those issues along with their scientific thinking, that's something we're definitely helping to provide, and through our program and many other DOE funded entrepreneurship programs.
So it's a very intentional program to accelerate research translation, which is directly related to what the market needs. But at the same time, you're building entrepreneurial skills as well for folks that are not necessarily, don't have that natural bend towards being, they're happy being in the labs, they're happy sort of focusing and going deep, doing a deep dive into the one area of interest that they have. But here you're trying to also provide that entrepreneurial skills building a little bit. So how has it impacted the way you guys work internally? As being architects of this program, has your experience of creating Cradle to Commerce and managing Cradle to Commerce, has it impacted other programs that you might be running?
Sure, I can take that. So I think that when you mentioned that scientists working in the lab are quite happy working there, sometimes it's because of lack of opportunity. And yes, you're doing some really impactful work, so you kind of get caught in that. But many who, given the opportunity, should be able to explore what entrepreneurial world looks like. On the other hand, there's lots of entrepreneurs who want to do the right thing and establish credibility with the right technology. So they want to get more access to scientific way of thinking. So in the first cohort of Cradle to Commerce, we've launched 8 teams, out of which 4 are pure startups who have their own technology and product. And they're trying to integrate IP from our national labs into the technology because it fills basically a white space in the technology in terms of a core functionality that they feel is important for the market. But also we have 4 teams that are actually a hybrid team between an entrepreneur matched up with a researcher. So that's sort of a proof of concept that they both want to work with each other. They want to, learn from each other's skills and partner in a way that brings that carbon and business together. So we already see that in our teams. To your question, whether we see it sort of in the management, oh, absolutely. I think that part of the Cradle to Commerce's mission is to bring more of this innovation mindset into the labs at large. And thank you to OneValley because you actually led some of our boot camps, innovation boot camps last year, and then coming up this year as well, where you will be talking and basically running a series of trainings and seminars where you bring entrepreneurial resources to then interact with the lab personnel. And I think together they should be able to understand each other better. Because I think the two worlds are so siloed and they feel like, oh yeah, science is going at like 10 miles an hour and entrepreneurship is going like 1,000 miles per hour. But at some point, we need to make entrepreneurs and scientists and policymakers be able to talk to each other and have time scales which are pertinent for what we need to do today. So in short, the answer is yes, and we hope to do more of the same.
And thanks for that shout out. I think we really enjoyed. I was there for the first boot camps, and it was a pleasure to meeting you both in person for the first time, and 2, it was just fantastic to meet all the incredible leaders at the labs across all the domains. I don't think I've been in a room with smarter people. It was incredible, the caliber of people that you had in the boot camp and also in the Cradle to Commerce management team. So I want to switch to one other gap I think that Cradle to Commerce is trying to address, which is, the funding gap, right? And I think that we know how challenging it is for hard tech companies and startups that are focusing on tough tech. It just has a longer lifespan to get to market. There's just so much more. You need to build a prototype, and then you need to do lab scale testing, and then you need to do market scale testing, and there's just a longer sort of runway. So what role do you think alternative sources of funding can play in the commercialization of this technology? How can investors be encouraged to support that early stage tech ventures with promising intellectual property? What would you say to investors to get them to invest in these companies that may not see that that booming commercial success for maybe 10 years?
You want me? So I can speak to that just quickly a little bit. The national labs it's well equipped with state of the art scientific facilities, and we have been building all these incredible assets over the last several decades. So for a small company and startups and who really are trying to solve these tough and really difficult, extremely difficult scientific problems, they need to have access to these facilities. And so one of the benefit and value that C2C is providing is streamlining that access to these scientific assets. And so that not only includes the facilities we have, but also includes the experts we have through the national labs. And we have, like we mentioned, we have 4 national labs pulling our experts together in 4 domains. That's basically a lot of it is cross-cutting scientific areas that with scientists and researchers, engineers who have been working on these a lot of tough issues for a long time. So they can, the entrepreneurs who want to partner with the labs, they can get access to these assets through our contract vehicle that we set up, and that's pretty much a one-stop shop for contracting. It's streamlined and simplified in a way that they don't have to wait for a long time for the contract to put in place. And that matchmaking we make through the program early on already established that kind of network and connection they needed to get that discussion going in terms of what needs to be done, whether the lab has the kind of equipment or devices or systems, or even the expertise that the entrepreneur needed to continue to carry on that torch from the lab into the commercialization side of it. So that's one thing that we're helping to do here.
And I can add here that I think the main thing investors are looking for is de-risking, right? So what C2C is really de-risking is the technology and the teams, and therefore the business. So technology de-risking is happening because in the first stage of our funnel, we essentially have like last year in the first cycle of the program, we had about 13 teams, and they went through 2 months of de-risking where we exposed them to the scientists at the national labs to talk through whether their technology had scientific chops or not, whether they would be able to integrate with the IP or not. And they also got training from one of our other incubator partners around the business models and validation, like early stage validation. So after that first process, and they go into the second stage of the funnel where they become a part of the cohort teams. And this year we had 8 cohort teams, and we essentially wanted to make sure that we were able to de-risk the team and technology to a level where we could actually trust the team to do the right thing, and then give them an 18-month runway with some seed funding from the government for them to be able to develop the hard tech to a point where investors would be interested in that. So I think that's like a huge part of what we do is that de-risking. So Shanshan, if you'd like to bring up the slide which shows the TRL, that really shows like how we're trying to really overcome that valley of death for both the technology as well as the commercialization. And through our partnerships with the 3 incubators, we're hoping that we can also bring in early stage pre-series investments so that the later stage investors can actually then come in and really look at the de-risked teams and technology. So this is basically where the first set of government funding wanes in the first green part. And then the second one, this is where we're sort of bringing up the second level of de-risked funding from the government and hoping that we can actually make them go through TRL, or technology readiness advancement, and then hand them off to investors and industry. So that's sort of the strategy that we are really trying to work on. In terms of teams, I think it's really essential that our teams are not just taken as the usual coming from the tier one universities, but we are tracking teams and reaching out to organizations so we can have folks who are parts of vulnerable communities or lesser represented communities and minorities. So for example, in Impel, the other program that we run, over 55% of our innovators are women and people of color. And we have a similar target for C2C as well, to make sure that equitable access is really a game changer, and such populations and diverse talent become part of the solution and not part of the problem. So that's really what we're trying to do, is make it easier for investors to invest in by bringing in not just the IP, but the tech de-risking and the team de-risking.
I mean, there's so much to learn from this program, and the way that you've approached it, from de-risking teams, de-risking capital, ensuring that the development of the technology is it's scientifically based and not greenwashed, which you're absolutely right is a huge problem right now in any sustainability or climate tech initiatives, and sort of the big buzzy thing to do right now is to join a climate tech startup. So what advice do you have for ecosystem builders and other organizations that are aiming to foster innovation and collaboration within the energy and technology space? Like, what are some things, as you've built this program, what are some things that they should keep in mind as they're trying to build sustainable, equitable innovation, energy innovation ecosystems?
I think the biggest thing in terms of advice is that partner with the right people. It's almost like a marriage, right? Like when we have 7 of us partners in C2C, we have so much fun together, and we have so much respect for each other, and I understand, and Shanshan understands, that each one of the partners is bringing so much strength to the table, and we have so much respect for them. So I think making sure that you realize what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, and you bring in the partnership that actually help to fill in your own weaknesses. And having the humility to do that, right, is really important. And the second thing is always use science as your backbone. Never let other imperatives take over, because unless you have data, unless you have the scientific validation, um, it might be great for the ROI, but it won't be great for the planet.
So on that, I think, as we're wrapping up here, Shanshan, do you have any recent success stories or notable examples of technologies that your office has successfully transferred to the commercial sector? And how do these sort of success stories contribute to the broader goals of the LBL?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one thing is that I know we're all working with climate tech related innovations. And so by definition, we all know it's, timeline for that is going to be long. We're all in this in the long haul, right? So, by being, humble and making sure that you understand each other's needs and building on that strength of each other, building each other up is very important in the long run. The successes we have is aligned with the timeline we're talking about. So we have for example, a aerosol duct sealing technology that was invented basically in the late 90s and was actually licensed to a startup company in the late 90s. And it was just now, basically last year, received a huge Series A funding through Breakthrough Energy, $60 million, funding for, basically expanding their international operation and growth in other country. So And it's in the, smart building space, right? And building technologies and commercialization for building technologies hasn't taken off until recent years, right? So, a lot of people didn't think that building was a big deal until they start looking at the science and the energy consumption. They realize, oh my gosh, it is the lowest hanging fruit we should start tackling if we want to get anything closer to that decarbonization goal. So yeah, and the same issue for battery related technologies, because that's one area I manage. And it's, you're working with chemistry, and there's always something that, certain components of that material you put together are not going to perform as well as you think it would. So battery technologies have come a long way, right? And the cost is continuing to go down because there are a lot of innovation that's and bold out of the box ideas being pushed out in the market, and the support from the government for these kind of innovative operations and ideas. And so it will take a long time, and we're all in this together. And so we got to work together.
And
Yeah,
I
to
think,
that end, sorry,
ahead.
Sabah, I want to mention that, Shanshan has talked about maybe a couple of examples, etc. But through C2C, we've curated about 110 IP, 56 test beds, about 25 scientists who are going to be helping the teams to make their project successful. And of course, 4 domains, which are being championed by 5 different DOE technology offices. So, we're at a place and time where we feel that we are at that tipping point of being able to have a lot of new successes. And we really hope, and keeping our fingers crossed, that we can, push forward and accelerate this to launch 1,000 more climate tech companies who are able to completely change what the planet looks like.
Definitely. And we would love to partner with you for not only 3 cohorts, but 100 cohorts. So that we can get to that goal where, we are staying under 1.5, and 1.5 degrees is actually a dot far away, because we have figured out how to decarbonize the earth, and may leave the planet a better place for our kids. So I think, just as we wrap up, I'm a big nerd. I'm always trying to add books to my reading list. I would love to know from each of you, what is your favorite book on innovation?
Been listening to a couple of guys from Silicon Valley about climate startups, and then I forgot their names, but their podcast is very how to say anti-scientific, because they talk about capitalism, they talk about ventures and VCs, and it's not typically a scientist or technology transfer person would love to hear, but I wanted to hear their perspective. I will get to their names to you in a bit.
Yeah, my favorite, actually, I think there's a dystopian future, sort of a sci-fi novel called Ministry for the Future, which is like really, like, it just shakes you up and makes you want to do stuff. The other one is Think Again by Adam Grant, and that's really about the difference in thinking between a politician, a priest, and a scientist. And I think that's really interesting to kind of change your mindset. So that's a great one. And the last one, which actually haven't completely finished, but I'm listening to right now, is Elon Musk, the book.
Walter Isaacson.
Correct. And it's just a fascinating study of a person who's achieved so much. I mean, um, all other, issues notwithstanding, but just what it takes to accelerate innovation. So I love these 3 books a lot.
Amazing. Thank you both so much. I've truly enjoyed every second of this conversation, and I've learned so much more about both of you. I'm hoping our paths can cross again in real life soon, but thank you both so much. I really, really, truly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Sabah.